The NBA is arguably more star-studded than it has ever been, and every team seems to have at least one guy now who you can put into that category, expected to lead the way for the rest of their squad. When you're the guy that your team goes to and relies on to carry the heaviest load, it comes with a set of expectations, and the best of the best match or even exceed those expectations, while others don't. In today's video, we're going to be discussing 5 star players in particular that have been letting their teams down for a variety of reasons based on their production on the court and possibly even some reasons off the court. I also want to emphasize that pretty much every player I'll be discussing today is still having an objectively good season, but there is context surrounding their overall seasons that make them disappointing. Before we start though, I want to thank HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. HelloFresh is here to help you take control of your time and budget with delicious recipes delivered right to your door. If you're looking for an easy way to eat healthy and cut back on spending, then HelloFresh is perfect for you because their recipes are easy to prepare and can be done in just 15 minutes. With over 35 weekly recipes, they have the options you're looking for to reach your goals. You can choose calorie or carb smart meals, you can swap proteins and sides, and you can add alternatives to your dishes with ease. They even have delicious crowd pleasers like barbecue ribs and chocolate chip brownies that you can prepare for your friends to watch the big game with. When I switched to HelloFresh, my meal preparation with them alleviated the stress of daily meals immensely, and I can speak from experience when I say that it will for you as well. So if this sounds right down your alley, then go to HelloFresh.com and use code hoopsreference21 for 21 free meals, plus free shipping on your order. Once again, thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. The first star player we'll be discussing today that I believe has been letting their team down this season is Bradley Beal of the Washington Wizards. The Wizards just paid Beal $250 million in the offseason because they believed in him as someone they could build a team around. They locked themselves into being a unit that will go as he goes, and quite frankly, Beal has not been living up to his end of the bargain. On the season, Beal is averaging about 22 points and 5 assists per game, shooting 51% from the field, which is objectively good. However, it's not good enough to justify everything that has gone down with him and the team over the last few years. This is his lowest scoring output since 2016, and as a player who has averaged over 30 points per game twice in his career, the most frustrating part is that you know he's capable of so much more. The Wizards are in 11th place in the Eastern Conference standings right now, with no real route to contention in the near future, which only heightens expectations for Beal even further. With all of this context now included, I can't help but feel as though he got the bag and is now just chilling with the money locked down because he doesn't necessarily look motivated out there anymore, and the Wizards need him at his best if they're going to do anything significant. The next star player letting his team down this season is Fred VanVleet of the Toronto Raptors. VanVleet isn't just letting the Raptors down, he's also letting himself down to a degree. Last season, VanVleet earned himself a nomination to the All-Star team for the first time, and deservedly so, and as a result of it, he entered this year with the goal of cementing himself at that level, because he can be a free agent after this season ends. He does have a player option in his contract for next year that he can opt into, but from what I've heard, and the expectations are for him to choose to become a free agent, seeking a max contract, so he needed another big year to prove that he deserves it. Instead, though, he's been shooting the ball worse than he ever has in his career outside of his rookie season, posting averages of about 19 points and 6 assists per game. The Raptors seemed happy with the roster going into the season after a playoff appearance last year, but they've taken a clear step backward thanks in part to VanVleet's production taking a step back, and now the conversation of blowing things up in Toronto is creeping up on them. They're probably a lot less motivated to offer a big contract to Fred VanVleet in the offseason, and his value is diminishing for if they want to look to trade him before the trade deadline, so it's a lose-lose situation here at the moment as they sit in 12th place in the Eastern Conference standings. The next star player letting his team down this season is Ben Simmons of the Brooklyn Nets. He's probably the most obvious inclusion on today's list because his production has nosedived across the board. When Ben Simmons left Philadelphia, the consensus assumption was that he would be able to thrive in a situation with less pressure on him individually while being surrounded with shooters and star-caliber scorers. But the exact opposite has happened, and now he's playing worse than he ever has. His scoring has literally been cut in half compared to his time as a 76er, he's grabbing fewer rebounds than ever, and he's dishing out fewer assists than ever. He's also getting benched in important moments down the stretch of games, and while he is still playing good defense, he's not performing like the Defensive Player of the Year candidate that he once was either. He is a literal shell of his former self, and after being criticized about his unwillingness to get aggressive on the offensive end, he now looks more scared than ever to attack the basket. He's a guy who has made multiple All-Star games and has been on the All-NBA list in the past, and many people were expecting him to return to that kind of form in a new environment, but that has just not happened. The next star player letting their team down this season is Kawhi Leonard of the Los Angeles Clippers. Kawhi's approach to this season has kind of been a telltale sign of how the Clippers season as a whole has been going, and that is of a lax nature. Kawhi is definitely stepping his individual play up lately, I won't fault him for that, but overall, Kawhi and the Clippers have basically been on cruise control from the get-go. There's clearly no urgency within this group because their focus is on the playoffs, and it starts with their best player Kawhi playing in just half of their games so far. Now, I'm not criticizing someone for prioritizing their health by any means, but it's also hard to get into a rhythm at any point in the year when your best player has only been able to play in more than 3 games in a row once. The load management conversation currently being had by the national media is spearheaded by Kawhi Leonard, who has taken it to an extreme, and with the Clippers just 2 games above 500, despite having the talent to compete with anybody, you can't help but feel underwhelmed with them. And finally, the last star player who I believe has been letting his team down a bit this season is Trey Young of the Atlanta Hawks. Young is an inclusion that isn't necessarily glaringly obvious, because on paper he is performing at an elite level, averaging about 27 points and 10 assists per game. The Hawks took a gamble this offseason that meant Trey was going to have to adapt a little bit, playing with another playmaker alongside him, but he hasn't really done so. We can't ignore the fact that reports have been coming out all year long about Trey not exactly being the best teammate or the easiest guy to coach, and despite now sharing the court with another playmaker like DeJounte Murray, he hasn't really made much of an effort to improve his effectiveness off the ball. What makes someone like Steph Curry so elite is not only his lethal shooting prowess, but also the fact that he works harder than anybody that when he doesn't have the ball in his hands to free himself up for open looks by cutting and running around. Trey is a great creator, but he's also incredibly ball dominant, and on top of all of that, he's shooting it pretty poorly this year, making just 32% of his threes. He needs to be a better leader, and he needs to play a more efficient brand of basketball, because the Hawks were expected to be able to contend this season, but they've been as underwhelming as it gets. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you think has been disappointing their teams the most this year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.